life is a battle with ego. You know, living in a nice neighborhood with a nice car, you know, your neighbor gets a new barbecue, you have to get a nicer one. It's just all playing into ego. Whereas out here, you'd be like, yeah, I live in the woods and I shit in a bucket. It's very hard to hold ego with that. It'd be like, yep, links back to we are just part of nature. Wax ring. So before I did the bus up, I had no freaking clue how to do anything about anything really. So most of this stuff has been learnt and probably learnt wrong, but nobody's died yet, so.
I feel like if I did this, I'd have to do like YouTubing how to install a toilet.
Yeah, I might have already spent a few hours doing that, but like last year, so if I flood the place. Yeah, I've totally forgotten how to do this. That's the wax ring, that comes later. YouTube. We don't deserve the level of comfort that we have right now, and too many people are just too comfortable with it. We're entitled. We're an entitled species. And no, you're not entitled to any of that stuff. And that's why I was about to go down the road of, especially with America, very, very obsessed with rights. Rights, I mean, it's the first thing you learn the first year of university in philosophy classes. Rights are just man-made. You don't have any rights. But we're really deeply inbuilt in us, especially in this country, that I have the right to. Nah, no, you don't. You're not entitled to anything. But if you feel like it's your right to drive around in an 8-liter diesel pickup truck for commute to work, when you don't tow anything ever, and you've got a 6-bedroom suburbia house with your AC at 68, I'm just like, no, I'm sorry. I live on this planet too. There's other people suffering on this planet because of your behavior, and I can't be involved in that anymore. Worried about. Gotta go check underneath because I'm pretty sure I just drilled into a beam. Fuck. That's the edge of the beam right there. Way forward. So it's going to have to come further forward, but that's going to make that's going to be shitty. There's just not enough room. Shit. Yeah, it basically means the toilet has to be like that. Crap.
And that's pulled forward.
I don't really have much choice. I don't have any choice. Just have to poop askew. Darn it.
My name's Joe Phillips. I'm from London. Both my parents are American, so I was born in the UK, grew up in the UK, always had the right to live and work over here. So my entire life kind of thought about how to explore that. And in high school I just thought it'd be a really fun thing to buy an old London traditional double-decker bus and tour across the US. Talked about it too much, so I kind of had to do it. I'd seen this bus online and I'd been looking for a long time, but I didn't have the money to buy it, so I put my apartment up for sale, and it took a year to sell. And every day I would go check the listing online to see whether it was still for sale, and occasionally write to him and be like, please don't sell it, this is perfect. And it didn't sell for a year, so when the time came, I got the money from selling my apartment. That same day I transferred it to his Swiss bank account without really thinking probably as much as I should have done about it. You don't send money to a Swiss bank account unless you've met the person. Flew over there. Thankfully he met me at the airport. Otherwise I would have lost my life savings. Spent 2 years doing it up, making it nicer. Then shipped it here, and this thing is not like any other thing you've driven before. It's kind of like a yacht where you start drifting that way, so you turn the wheel to the right to compensate, then you've already overcompensated, because then about 2 seconds later the vehicle will go way over to the right, and then you have to do left to get back, and so you have to constantly doing this. Like if you see videos of me driving, which there are some online, that's just me constantly for 15 hours a day. And there's not any crash protection either. There's no seatbelts. It's from 1967, so no, actually if I was on a really dodgy like hill route that I was worried my brakes might fail, I just kept the door open. If the brakes fail, I jump out. Dougal was the nickname of one of my old paramedic colleagues who died in 2009, maybe 2010 she died. Yeah, it was her nickname that her family gave her, and it's also the character in a couple of English TV shows. And it's not 9 because most of the bus's life it was a number 9, so it was servicing the West Ends into central London, hence why it's got like Piccadilly Circus, so it's one of the main routes. The actual Routemaster bus is a real icon. A lot of people see London or English double-decker buses and just kind of think that they're all the same, but they're not. The Routemaster is the real iconic one. It was the most impractical vehicle to have done this trip on. It's a Routemaster bus. There's not many of them around anymore, especially in good shape. A lot of the bus journey, it didn't end up being, thankfully, too much like it, but it was kind of inspired by me reading the electrical lead acid test in my teens. It was the Merry Pranksters, so it was a bunch of progressive kind of hippies traveling around the US, getting up to no good, and that's their bus called Further. It's just a real iconic vehicle. So a lot of the inspiration behind the bus tour was from reading that in my teens, but by the time I actually started the tour I was in my 30s, and I wasn't quite so into tripping my balls off 24/7. So it was a lot more chilled. I've always had a fascination in the US, mainly just because my grandma used to pay for us to fly over and visit her in Roswell, New Mexico every summer, up until she died when I was 7. So for me, America was always this fantastic holiday vacation where it was, we had our own bicycles in Roswell, we had our own little group of friends in the neighborhood. We'd just spend all summer just playing, typical American suburbia in a cul-de-sac or, quiet back street, and just the freedom to be able to explore, which was so different to life in London, where there's just traffic everywhere. It's just people are on top of each other. You don't have that freedom of being a kid and just exploring. So to me, America's always been a place of adventure, somewhere to stretch your wings. So I kind of wanted to explore that and see whether that was still rung true when I was actually over here for longer term. And because I was kind of quite transient on the year, going around the whole country,
I didn't really work. I didn't really settle down in one place, so it was still a place of adventure, and I didn't have anything apart from friends and family in the UK that I really wanted to stay there for. So I basically thought I'd just give it a go over here, see what it's like working over here, and that's continued. That's been 6 years now, 7 years. I still love the UK. I just don't have any urge to go back apart from for friends and family. Too many lines.
It's been a massive learning experience for me, because my only experience here before of construction was spending 2 years renovating the bus really badly and screwing most things up. When you've never done it before, you're terrified of just how do you do this? Where do you start?
I'll make it work. And I dropped the last one down the hole. Let's just make sure before I put the wax ring on. Yeah, it's really far away from the back. Fuck. There's just no choice. Yep. That's annoying. I can't move this anymore either because it's fully plumbed in.
Yeah.
It's alright. Oh wow, that was gross. Famous last words. Actually, no, let's do it properly.
So many people are just like, oh, you're just a socialist. You just want people to have free stuff. It's like, no, I just don't want the rich people to take everything. The rich-poor divide is now greater than ever in history. More than it was in the serfs and, the peasants and the lords' days. Why do we put up with it? We don't have a choice. We don't have a way to change it. So I'm not going to play the game. That's what I'm doing. I'm abstaining from the system that just makes Jeff Bezos and people like that richer. I mean, the fact that we have a term now, the working poor in this country, it's not just the working class. Upper class, middle class, working class, and the working poor. I mean, you are working 40 hours a week and you still cannot afford to survive. What the fuck? Nah, done with it. I'm happy to be classified as a working poor as long as I don't feel like I'm ever struggling, and I don't feel like I'm struggling with this lifestyle.
Apparently that's how you install the toilet. It's fine. Oh shit.
initially when I got out here and just doing things that felt illicit, like shooting a gun, or I constantly felt like I was being naughty, like I was doing something wrong. And that's completely the opposite from how Texans see it, being like, you're living in the country and you're keeping up with your firearms proficiency. That's a good, responsible thing to do. It took me at least 2 years to get used to that idea. Like, I would be out on this property out here shooting on the shooting range, and an airplane or a helicopter would go above and I'd feel the need to hide the gun. Why? It just, but I still had that ingrained in me from being in the UK, that it's, you have to be very, very careful to not step on other people's toes in England, because there's so many people living on top of each other. You just don't have that over here. So it kind of changed my mentality and my perception quite a lot, and what I want out of life. And I would really, really struggle to go back to the UK and be much more restricted again. It sounds contradictory, but there's, in one sense, it's very, very difficult to withdraw from the system. And in another sense, it's a lot easier than you think, which sounds ludicrous. But it's frustrating when you don't want to play the game anymore. So in one way, it's very, very difficult, but in another way, as long as you're still playing by some of the rules, it's surprisingly easy to start ignoring and, I guess, a little bit judging, looking down on a little bit the way the rest of society lives, and the incredibly wasteful, selfish way that a lot of people live. You know, we are on the precipice of a real climate emergency. Well, we're not on the precipice, we're in a climate emergency in this world, and not remotely enough is being done. And people are not doing it voluntarily. The free market's not sorting it out. We're getting to the point where it is too late. And the only way to get stuff to change, if people are not going to do it voluntarily, is to force it. But then we're going into kind of down the road of, none of us want to go down, of fascism, dictatorships, and moving away from a democratic society. But maybe democracy has failed us. Maybe capitalism has failed us. I just don't know, but I'm not going to play anymore. I don't want to live carbon neutrally or negatively. I don't think we have a choice. Digging ditches. On almost every day, it's, especially after a long day working outside, you come out to that, and it's hot. It gets nicely hot.
I guess it's also linked to just the kind of human need for challenges. I mean, why do people run marathons? Why do people climb mountains? It's to push themselves and feel the achievement of pushing themselves maybe beyond what they thought they might have been able to do. And I look back on it with pride, being like, I know if the shit hits the fan, I don't need AC. Like, it is truly just a luxury that we've got really accustomed to over here, and is not necessarily needed or deserved. It might sound a bit brutal, but until we find more ecological ways of generating electricity, to me, you don't have the right to have your AC on at 68 degrees in your poorly insulated, terribly built, incredibly wasteful townhouse. We're all creatures of this planet. You don't have. This may be coming from my European background as well, and being like, you see people over here like in their big pickup trucks rolling coal, and I just think you are the biggest selfish asshole I can pretty much think about. Like, you don't even have a conception of the impact you're having on other people's lives. Not just the people in the car behind you that might have asthma or emphysema, that you're then increasing their breathing problems and decreasing their quality of life, but you're using up valuable resources. It's an ego thing.
If I ever have to murder and bury anybody, it's going to be a shallow grave.
It's
It's going to be a very shallow grave. I think Bernie probably end up doing most of the work for me.
I'll say, yeah, just bricktop them.
Yeah, I don't love anybody enough to dig a large enough hole for them in that shit.